All right, so let's talk about Malcolm then. First of all, the speech that he gave. Notice the tone. Obviously, he was a little fired up. He wasn't talking about peaceful things. Who was he actually attacking a little bit in that video? Didn't use their name, the person's name. When he says, you know, we're not going to sing, we shall overcome, we're not going to march, we're not going to hold hands, we're not going to, yes.
Martin Luther King?
He's attacking Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were adversarial, or probably more likely, Malcolm X was adversarial to Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King always seemed to try, he was always trying to take the high road and play nice, so to speak. And again, why are we doing Malcolm now when we're in the middle of transcendentalism? Well, we're going to start civil disobedience tomorrow, which is Thoreau. And when we read Thoreau, you're going to find out that Gandhi and Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King, along with a whole host of other people, have used Henry David Thoreau as a guide for civil disobedience. Malcolm X was pretty fed up. Notice he says, if you want freedom, you got to fight for it. Learn karate, learn judo. He advocated for arming themselves. You would never heard anything like that out of Martin Luther King. Now, I'm not a strong enough historian on the topic. I mean, I've read all of Malcolm X. I've read a biography on Malcolm X. I've seen documentaries on the civil rights movement. But I can't tell that Mr. Flannery would probably be better at it in AP US history, but I don't know how effective Martin Luther King would be without Malcolm X, because you can bet behind closed doors, I would think, that Martin Luther King might be saying, hey, you've got Malcolm out there. He's advocating for something far more motivated, if you will, or potential violence. And there was already plenty of violence in America. There were massive protests. There were cities, big swaths of cities that were burned down. We see today, over the summer, there were protests this summer. There were some buildings that were set on fire. I can think of the one in Atlanta, Georgia, that happened in like a Wendy's parking lot. That Wendy's was burned down. Okay, it was one building, so bad enough. We had a building burned down. The Watts riots, it was blocks and blocks of the town were consumed by fire. So the level of protest today is there. There's probably the same, similar in the numbers of people out, but the amount of destruction is vastly different. Any idea why the movement today is possibly less violent, less catastrophic to property? What did you notice about the protests that you saw this summer? Who were the participants? When you looked at the crowd, what kind of people were there? Race, color, creed. What do you think?
All of them.
Yeah, I feel like it was like all people.
Yes, that's the, I think, again, history will show, and I'm thinking just from our recent history, also all watching this unfold, one of the reasons why, possibly, is the people protesting were not just African Americans. There were all walks of life there, all age groups, okay? Every different religion, every different race was out there. Everybody was out there. No one believes that I don't want to say no one, because that'll always get in trouble with no one, but it's a vast majority of people. And if you were an upset citizen, especially if you were the African American community, right? But you look around and you see every walk of life out there. Every video, every interview I saw out there, a lot of the people said, it is nice to see everybody out here. This isn't just us. This isn't just, white cop and African American male. This is our society. We don't want this as a society. So there's plenty of protests, and there's always, anytime you get a bunch of people together protest, there's always going to be, somebody's going to be messing around, right? But by and large, most were peaceful, most were as orderly as possible, and there wasn't a ton of violence. Whereas in, if you read the 60s, you know, people were killed. Even the Rodney King riots of LA in the 90s, they burned huge swaths of the city, and there were plenty of people killed, ruthlessly beaten. Just, it was far worse. And then that wasn't anything compared to the 60s. So it's very possible that, you know, it's been a great change, if you will, since the 60s to today. We see it. But we also, in that great change, see all the inadequacies that are still in our society. We still see the things that need to be fixed. And there's still that advocacy that it must be done. And I'm hoping to show you just a brief little bit of reading. I know it seems like a lot to you, 10 here, 6 here, 8 pages here, a couple chapters there. It seems extensive, but those guys, you know, if you study, you know, when you listen to, say, you know, you next year in AP US History, Mr. Flannery talk about subjects, he's generally read books on them. You know, I've read on these historical things, and a lot of times he's turning those books over to me, and I'm reading them, but I'm always 2 or 3 books behind him. That's what his expertise is constantly reading that. So mine is of a different nature, but I defer to him on that. And this is what you're seeing here. Now, up on the screen, you can see the original Colin Kaepernick, if you will. Has anybody ever seen those images? From the 60s, 1968 Olympics? With probably late 60s, 67, 68, and 69 were probably the most tumultuous years in America. Vietnam was at its worst. Most of the people that were drafted and sent to fight in Vietnam were either poor whites or poor blacks, okay? And if you had any money or any pull, you got out of it. I mean, just even look, we've had 3 presidents, 3 of the last 4 presidents, I think, got out of Vietnam. President Trump got out of it. President George W. Bush got out of it. He was a National Guard in Texas, keeping us safe from the Viet Cong down there, but he was serving. And then President Clinton also got out of it. You know, people that had wealth or connections or opportunities or stuff, they got out of it. The poor were there, and blacks were disproportionately represented in Vietnam, way disproportionately. And so there was a lot of animosity. So you had them being sent to Vietnam, you had all the discontent in the cities, and then the United States is sending off its best athletes, and they're winning gold and bronze here, and they raise the black power sign. Boy, people were not happy about that. That, I saw a documentary a while ago. They were not treated as heroes when they came home, not one bit. You know, and again, it's quiet. They never said a word, but it's it's a sign of protest. And again, it is one of the hallmarks of our country that you're learning about in government, right? About the way the rules are, and we determine that. So I wanted you to see that. Again, just help to tie all of that going on, because we see that in our society today with the national anthem. It would be nice to see in the near future that we can all be proud in what we've changed in our culture, and then have see that reflected in how we participate in the national anthem. But that is, again, part of our ability to speak out about what we see as wrong. The speech that we saw Denzel Washington give, again, that's part of the actual words from Malcolm X. If you want to see some more of Malcolm X, just his speeches are all over the internet. They're easy to find. That line that he gave about, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on us, that's one of his famous lines. And some of the, you can feel the palpable anger in his voice in those videos. He tries to do a little slang. That's the word jive. I don't know how many of you knew that was actual slang at the time. Just jiving, just kind of horsing around, messing around, not being serious. You know, he doesn't really pull it off real well because he doesn't, you know, when you give a line like that, sometimes you smile, you know, to let everybody know that you're being silly. But he was a very serious man. If you read all of this, you can see why. When you read chapter 1, you can understand why he's not a happy person after chapter 1. That's enough to leave a mark on somebody for their life. And so I wanted to just kind of go over what was the main thing about Marcus Garvey. What was his main teaching? Yes, Lily.
He believed that the races should be segregated and that all African Americans should go back to Africa.
Yeah, he advocated for a type of segregation. There was at least some consideration or discussion or hope for a state in the Union that was for blacks only. Almost like the Indian reservations, Native American reservations, kind of like that. Not exactly, but obviously that probably wasn't met well. First of all, it's you know, it's not healthy. It's called balkanization. It's kind of the stuff that led to the Civil War in the South. You know, you start cordoning off with one another. Our types are here, your types are there. That's how civil wars occur. So that's not healthy, but you can understand why they would advocate that. The Back to Africa movement was not successful either, because many prominent African Americans left and went back to Africa for a while and felt extremely disconnected and came back to America. If you can picture how disconnected they felt, right? They left here and then returned to the very tumult that they left. And it's not, seems like a good idea, but it's not really practical. The Irish experienced that. Second and third generation Irish who made their money in America after the immigration here returned to Ireland only to find out that they were totally alienated from the culture. They didn't fit in there. They weren't wanted, nor did they want to be there, you know. So the diction in chapter 2, in first chapter, on page 2 and 3, I was trying to show you how simple everything is. It only uses the verb was every sentence. It's not meant to be elegantly written. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to tell the story. If you want to know why I, Malcolm X, am angry about this world, here it is. This is my people's history. This is my history. You can see why he was out there advocating for radical change. Before we go, I asked for a quote that was kind of shocking. Who would like to share? A quote that you found that was a tad shocking to you. Nolan, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So, I mean, it's not like a quote, but like it's an example, like when he criticizes his parents for like favoritism of the kids based on how black they are.
Okay.
I was just like, that was just interesting to me, just like, because like I wouldn't like think that would happen. But
It was something I learned myself. I was taught by African American students years ago when we first started doing this. I thought that was weird, and there was comments in class by African American students, and now that goes on, and I was surprised. I guess maybe even a bit saddened, you know. But the in having adopted 2 biracial kids, I've heard some things that come out of people's mouths that just, they're not intending to be odd. How about just use the word odd, but you're like, why would you say that? You know, but some people don't think before they speak, or they don't know that what they're saying could be offensive or construed as just weird. But, you know, Malcolm's grandmother was raped. I think that's right. She was a slave in Barbados, and then Malcolm's mom was very light-skinned, to the point where she actually could make herself appear to be white. And then, of course, Malcolm was the light-skinned kid, where the other ones were darker. And there was favoritism in that. at home, which would be kind of surprising. And then he had a very distrustful opinion of the government because they came in, the government, social workers, and tried to. I would hope they were trying to help the family. I would hope their intent was good. Obviously, pulling the family apart destroyed anything left that the mother had. But why would the mom not spiral out of control, right? Her husband was killed, and then it was chalked up as suicide. And because it was suicide, they didn't get the life insurance policy. And therefore, they were destitute. So you can see where that would push a mother over the edge and drive the kids to the levels of anger. If you read the whole book, it's very sad what happens to Malcolm Little's mother. I would tell you before we go, the book it's a great book. Next 2 chapters are due next week, next Monday. We'll finish talking about them tomorrow. If you choose to watch the film, maybe over break, really only a little bit of chapter 3 is even in the film. The rest, so would all be kind of new. It's a well done film, and the book's worth reading. Maybe not now, maybe later in life. Okay, so you guys get ready to go.